Good afternoon. Welcome back to another rendition of the B-Nature Virtual Event Space. You are watching XR LED virtual production with TEDxCambridge and Studio Lab, sponsored by Panasonic. So I want to thank Panasonic for sponsoring tonight's event, which is part two of a two-part series. We are joining TEDxCambridge, Studio Lab, and Panasonic for a technical exploration of XR LED cinema equipment and state-of-the-art workflows. Now, this, as I said, is the final part of a two-part series where we are going over this technology that is just revolutionizing the film and entertainment industry. And as you see joining us live here, we have Ian Messina and Dmitri Gunn. Obviously, we got Barry Russo in the house right there. For those of you who didn't catch part one of this, I recommend you do so. It went over a very basic understanding of XR LED, and we drew some comparisons to green screening and really how this technology is taking shape. So let's get into meeting tonight's guests. Obviously, as you see there, we have Dmitri Gunn, who is the executive director of TEDxCambridge, which is transforming the TED Talk experience with state-of-the-art virtual production technology. And by his side is Ian Messina, the director of virtual production at Studio Lab and among the country's leading specialists in virtual production. And Barry Russo rounding out the group. Barry's been serving the film industry since 1980 and is a lead development team member for the Panasonic VariCam 35 cameras. We were supposed to be joined by Lawrence Jones. He's unfortunately unable to make it tonight. So we do want to thank him for his contributions to this series, and we hope all is well on Lawrence's end. And I want to also extend a huge thank you to Studio Lab for providing a wonderful live action edition, as you are seeing right there. Dmitri, Ian, and the whole Studio Lab and TEDxCambridge team pulled this together. This was not supposed to be as immersive as an experience as we're bringing you tonight, but they pulled something together in the 11th hour to really give you guys a full look at what we're going to be talking about. And I would be remiss if I did not mention the studio team here at B&H, specifically Clarissa Fulgeri and Michelle Suissa, for their help in procuring some of the equipment that you're going to be seeing here tonight. So I want to thank all of our sponsors, everybody involved in making this happen. This has just been an exciting two-part experience that we are going to be diving into. Tonight's a little deeper dive than the first time. So everybody, welcome. What's going on, guys?
Hey, is this the streaming of the VariCam from the stage?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've never seen the VariCam stream before. This is awesome. We make a lot of robotic cameras, and not many people stream with the VariCam, but so thank you. That's pretty fun.
The look on Barry's face was priceless, Dmitri, when you see his eyes light up like, wait, hold on, this is really happening.
Yeah, we love cinema platforms, right? So the opportunity to go all in with Panasonic, build and extend on that relationship with, actually these are Barry's cameras right now. So Barry, thank you so much. So let's get right into it. I think we got a lot of ground to cover. I just wanted to provide a little contextual outline as far as like our own journey, and then hand it over to sort of Ian, because in this studio is just an amazing amount of sort of equipment and expertise, all in service of sort of visually immersive sort of filmmaking. And so the background on TEDxCambridge, we were the first licensed TEDx event in the world. We're the longest running. We're one of the largest at the Boston Opera House, around 3,000 guests. And along came the pandemic. And we're like, well, what do we do now? And so we went all in with Ian, Tim, John, Ben, Aaron, the whole team here at Studio Lab that really should have shared our enthusiasm to transform filmmaking in a great facility here in Derry, New Hampshire. We've done a lot of testing with Ian and the team. If it was easy, we like to joke, everyone would be doing it. It's extraordinarily hard, but we're starting now to really enjoy the fruits of this sort of collaboration with the Studio Lab team. And so we will be premiering later this year. Actually, we literally just came out of a cinema shoot for some additional content. We'll premiere later this year. And with that, I want to kind of turn things over to Ian and sort of explain a little bit about their technology, their workflow, their own journey, because without them, none of this would be possible. So Ian, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, what's going on, guys? I'm Ian Messina. I'm the director of virtual production here at Studio Lab. I guess we'll dive kind of right into it. There's two sides of this. There's the technical side, which we're really going to dive into, and then there's also the creative side, which I think everybody's ultra interested about. It's like, hey, if I'm interested in these studios if I want to learn how to be on a stage, or where can I fill in or jump on a spot, because these stages are popping up everywhere, and it's like, you know, what are the things that you need to know? What are the things that you have to understand to be effective on set? And I think, you know, you can know all the technical, but how do you actually implement this technology from a creative standpoint is super important as well. Just like any piece of hardware equipment, you know what I mean? You can have the best of the best, but if a story is not being told through that technology, it doesn't really help advance the story. So, you know, if you guys have any questions from a technical or a creative side of it, we need those will obviously be addressed, because there's a lot of production talk out there about the technology, and it's amazing. It helps us actually create amazing looking images. But again, from that creative standpoint, we'll be jumping in that as well. So for a starter, this is actually the set. It's being rendered live right behind us. The jib right now can actually move. So you can actually, if you're on jib, just kind of take it off and you can kind of look. This whole scene is moving dynamic behind us. We actually just got off a shoot. You'll see some of the other cameras here. These are all being tracked as well. And we have some other cool technology along our right side of us that we'll be showcasing as well. This actually was something that we've been doing in the past couple of months as far as a moving LED wall tile. We'll get into that. As well as just like what we might start off on is a little bit of how you prep for a shoot. Is that something you'd want to move into first?
Definitely.
Sweet. So we'll do this really quick. John, do you want to just throw up the test like video wall? Yep. So perfect. Here we go. So if you can jib around the room, show them kind of the space, see what this studio looks like. You know, we have our main back wall here. You see the side wall as well. And then I don't know if you can see this, but we also have a top wall here. And this all helps for reflections. And the main reason really why we shoot in an LED volume over green screen, and you'll get a lot of back and forth, why do LED, why do green screen? It's mainly the reflections and obviously the real-time capture. Now the reflections are super important when you're shooting, you know, shiny metals. That's a great reason why the Mandalorian used this technology, is because they didn't want to go and remove stuff in post for green screen as well. So John, now that we're here, what we're gonna do and how we calibrate this stuff, and actually let's just bring you over to this camera right here so you can understand this a bit. If you kind of pan over, you mind panning this camera this way? Perfect. So this is obviously Panasonic's cameras with Fujinon glass. This is an amazing setup for what we're doing for broadcast for TEDx. But I want you to pay attention to this piece up here. This is the actual tracker we're using. This is 3D printed in-house by Aaron. And what we did here is you've got all these points on top of the tracker. And these are being aligned. And I don't know if we can show this, but there's cameras aligning all around our studio. They're blue. I think you'll be able to see, what ones do we have around here, Tim? Maybe if you go and show that top left side, you'll see these blue rings. Now we have around 12 to 16 of these around the studio. These rings are also used if you do any motion capture work, you can utilize this same technology. And if anybody's interested, the brand that we use is OptiTrack. And they do a lot of video game and motion capture work, as well as just tracking the camera. So again, this piece of equipment is the main unit that is used to, again, track where the camera is in space real time. Now, what we're going to do here is the first thing that we usually do on set is we do a delay calibration. I don't want to get too much into this on the technical side because it's just like in short form, there's a delay between the camera and the actual information that the computers get. But what we'll go into is a spatial calibration. So John, can you just run a quick spatial calibration? And what this is going to do, it's going to take basically the view of what the camera's seeing and the actual camera. And if you hold the camera really still, because I think it has to be still to do this, do it right there. And then what it's going to do is it's going to basically flash a bunch of dots all over the wall and try and triangulate its position to the wall. So we'll do that one real quick. John, are we ready for that? Go ahead. So it'll flash and then it's going to show you all these dots. And usually, you know, this takes around 10 to 20 seconds per calibration. Now we're not going to do a bunch of these. Usually you take 9. And what this would do is it's basically building a 3D representation of our room. And then after that, John, you want to do a color calibration. And I know this is the technical part. I'm just trying to go through it so you can understand how the camera processes all of this. And go ahead and do a color calibration whenever you're ready. This one will be quicker. As you can see, that was a really fast shot. of just like a bunch of colors. Usually this will take anywhere between 10 minutes and it'll do it really slow. So what it's doing is basically building a full system or an understanding of what the calibration is in the camera as well as what it is on the video wall. And now we can get kind of into more of the fun and creative stuff is when you develop these worlds. So John, jump back in whenever you're ready to that first world we were in with the Tedx set. And we can talk about a little bit more of the creative side as far as world control. Is this kind of making a little bit of sense of what's going on? I can slow down or we can go back over things as well.
No, it totally does. Now, Ian, when these calibrations are done, is this hinged upon, how the light is set up, what scene you're shooting? How often are you guys calibrating?
We calibrate at the beginning of the day. That's usually when you get your setup, and it's pretty much it's the camera and it's the lens choice itself is what it really is. So when you look at this whole system, if you're changing out your lenses or changing out, which you shouldn't be changing out your camera, but say there was a camera change, that's when you really want to go in, because what it's doing as well is it's building a system for the actual camera layout to refer back to, so everything looks correct. So again, just when the lens and the camera is changed out there. John, go to, I believe it's the night scene, should be on the end of that render stream. So what John's doing right now is going through and he can change out the certain sets we're in. And so this one was a set we did earlier that day. Now, something I want to point out is this iPad app. It allows us for control over the whole sky. So if you swing the jib around over here and come behind us, we'll actually show you, we actually did a shoot today with this exact set, rendered real time, and some of the fun stuff that you see on the Mandalorian sets and all of that is sky control. Like if I could control where my sun actually is or what time of day it is, that's something that's super crucial to DPs. And it was actually great. You work with DPs, they come on a set for the first time, they're like, all right, like let's bring it down right to this perfect degree, and you're getting that shot. That's amazing, and it can hold there. So I'll really quickly change the time of day right now. You can see it just got pretty dark. And again, we're being lit by front light, so this won't update real time. But the fact that, I can just simply, come on set, kind of look at what we're trying to do is very easy. And you can pretty much control anything that you want as long as you think about it beforehand. So if you're a DP and you come on set, you want sky control, you want sun angle, or even how big the moon is. We have to think about that beforehand and really think about, hey, these are things we want control over, because you have to code them into the actual control system. And working with Dmitri and some of the crazy stuff they wanted to do, we wanted to be able to make sure that they had control on set. We didn't need to be having any downtime or anything like that. So this iPad makes it really easy, as well as you can tie in your lights as well and your whole scene to this. So it does update. And that's something, again, right before we jumped on this call, we had, an even larger set. And it was massive, and it tied in together. When you hit go, it was a day to night transition between all of our lights, going from that nighttime to that daytime, and it looked like it was cohesive. It felt like it was all moving together.
Well, one of the other advantages is, particularly dialing in the scene with like a DP to we moved some trees around. We shifted that scene as far as framing and blocking, and the opportunity. That's something that's really difficult with green screen because it's all done in post, right? But real-time final pixel through the camera with the wall, you can make those adjustments. And so I think on behalf of our team, and speaking on behalf of Dave Booley, our DP, we sleep really well at the end of the day because we know we got it. Or if something didn't quite work out and we want to make those tweaks, 10, 15 minutes over in the brain bar, which Ian will show you a little bit later, you can move that world around, you can optimize it. So from a creative perspective, I think the other advantage of this technology versus green screen is particularly for our speakers, they're almost uniformly academics. Where is the camera? Oh, there we are. Academics and researchers, and green screen in a cycloidal environment is extremely foreign, right? So beyond sort of the advantages from a visual perspective and final pixel is the opportunity to put them into these immersive worlds so they have that greater confidence and authenticity when they're communicating through that camera, through that lens to that audience of sort of TED fans. That's what got us really excited about the capability, the authenticity of the delivery, which is uniform for TED Talks as well as anyone else in front of it, particularly senior executives. I think the juice is worth the squeeze when it comes to sort of exploring these kinds of workflows and formats, because they're just so much more confident about the sort of delivery and the authenticity that translates to clients, customers, sales, whatever it might be, as well as the creative freedom from like a DP perspective to sort of change that world, change that time, really dial it in so that, I mean, the majority of our post process right now is sound design and color grading. Like we're doing almost nothing in post. We're fixing it and we're dialing it in pre.
Yeah. Which is a majority of your time. I think people really do have to understand from the creative perspective is a lot of the time that you would spend in post, you are spending in pre. And sometimes that can go right over people's heads. And it's like, all right, we have to spend so much more time in pre-production, like a lot more than you would. So making sure you dedicate enough time for yourself and your crew to like come on set and be like, let's tweak things, because it's really reactive. You try one thing, you see how it looks, and you really feel it out, which is really the fun and creative part. You sit there after everything's built out and your DP can go, hey, let's move this like 10 degrees this way, and it makes a difference. Like you see sort of this blending of your physical world and your digital world slowly come to life. And I think that's the fun part, is you're just like, all right, this looked beautiful back on the video wall. Now, how do we blend it in our real set? And that's something you have to take into account when you're building these worlds. Is this is stripped down to our studio. You know, usually you bring in a floor, a full set around it, and really immerse the whole subject in it. And you're treating the LED wall like green screen, like it's something further beyond you. But with the added benefit of you can tell your actor, hey, look on that horizon, or match, look right at the sun, and your gaze is perfect. You know, you're not asking your actor to look at a blue dot on the wall and say, hey, you have to react to this. Like, oh, wow, they can actually physically see it update right in front of them, which has been really fun to see actors and people using this technology for the first time.
And just so everyone understands, I said, if you just had a still background there, even if it was moving, if you didn't control the perspective and use the gaming engine that you do with the ray tracing and everything else, it would look like a cardboard cutout. Right. Yeah. It would look awful. So just so everyone understands the reason why you have to use that power in the background to move things around perspectively controlled with the camera.
And Dmitri, you used the weather person analogy in part one of this. And I think it's, when Ian was just explaining that, it's like, you don't really think about it. Like, yeah, these people are looking at dots and visual cues that don't really match up with what it's supposed to look like after post-production, when you see it. So you think about all the weather people that are just kind of staring off at a screen off camera, and they're pointing at things that they can't really see. So I can only imagine that this helps immensely with really, like you said, Ian, immersing the actor or the speaker or whoever is on screen in the world that they're supposed to be in.
Yeah, definitely. And something else to think about is when you do have now that collaboration between the director and the actor, it changes things. Like most of the time, a director and a DP's goal is to try and help the crew really understand what's going on here. And what we're doing here, and this is something we can show you, is this side video wall. If I can get somebody here to help me push this, but the goal is, again, to have actors and actresses be immersed in it. Now, with this new technology that we're trying to work on, you can utilize this video wall alone. It's actually being tracked on top of it. So if you guys turn it, while this thing is moving, the camera is actually, calibrating perspective. So if they move in, they're out of tracker range. So if you guys come in, but you can actually see this video wall move now as you come in and out. And with what's interesting about this one is if you walk forever, technically, if this was on a track, you'd be able to walk forever and you wouldn't be limited by space in your studio. So this is something that's recent, and we've just been working on, is utilizing all of the camera tracking and the LED wall technology together to try and take this technology and break it out of its box. Because we've seen stuff, everybody has the round volume, but what does it look like if you want to do, a 2-mile walk or something super far, and we want to track stuff. So that's something that allows the director and the actors to kind of, when the actor sees something on the wall and the director is like, this is exactly how I want you to react. It's really cool to see that light up on their face as it would if you're actually right there in real space. So go ahead.
That's wild. I'm just sitting here. It's like my mind is blown as you guys are sitting out. I can't believe I'm watching this. I'm sitting here on a mirrorless camera, and you guys are in a whole friggin' studio there, with everything moving around you. Is this a typical studio size for XR LED, or?
It depends on what type of XR LED you're looking for. If you're looking, there's a lot of them that build cubes. So there's one sidewall, there's another sidewall, and one in the middle, and that's for full XR. Like if you're going to do the floor. Those things usually typically run around this size. But again, depending on how large you build these studios, it can be anywhere, you know, from I don't know, if you look at the Mandalorian size of a building, they're just getting bigger. So this is a mid-range studio if you were going to compare, you know, certain size-wise.
Actually, Ian, can you speak a little bit more about the difference between, like, those are two different variants, the pros and cons. And so everyone's like, oh, what's the best volume? It's like, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What's your goal? Can you unpack that a little bit? Because that's one of the common traps people get into. It's like, oh, I just want the best form factor. And it's like, well,
for sure,
what do you want to do?
And I guess you could break that into, if you're trying to do full XR, like you're trying to envelop your actors in a full 3D world, you need screens all around you, just like you would do for a green screen shoot, right? So you take that green screen and think about it like a regular LED wall. If you have the floor and the sides, the one thing about that is the floor isn't really ever going to look real. Some people like that, and you can build your sets around it. Think of like broadcast when you have a morning talk show and they have a full set. That's where those type of shows where you're enveloping them in a full 3D world, that would make sense. As well as where this one is a curved background and an open floor. That way we can bring in any type of floor or set that needs to be built around it. And that way we can utilize our full space without building on top of an LED floor. So you'll either have one with an LED floor or some without, as well as some full roof and enclosing for full-on reflections. And then like ours is, it's really open-ended, so you can bring your own lights in. Something that's super important is that I think a big misconception is the video wall lights you perfectly. Like it envelops you and then it looks beautiful. It doesn't. You know, video wall CRI ratings aren't the best. Like they don't look that good. That's why there's a bunch of lights around us, because we're trying to calculate and make something look really cinematic. So don't, like, people are scared, oh, you know, we throw lighting out the window. It's like not like that. No, you need to keep in all the stuff that you learned and light it accordingly. So that's kind of why we have ours open-ended. You know, you have a lot of things that move around. The ceiling you can rig stuff off of. So sometimes it's good to have a full ceiling because you are getting those reflections. But we find a lot of times that DPs and directors come and want to hang their own lighting just because they have way more control. And that's what this is about. It's giving your creatives more control in the end.
How does lighting differ from a traditional production without XR LED? I mean, you talked about reflections and, you know, that being the difference between, or one of the differences between using green screens. How does that affect? I mean, are you getting a light kickback off of these LED screens that's affecting how the actor is lit?
To a certain degree, and also it depends how bright you run the wall. You know, you want to run it obviously at a certain rate where you're not getting scan lines. You also have to gen lock your cameras so they don't get that scan line. But generally, you know, if you're not overpowering it with sky panels and all these other lights, yes, you could get a spill onto you. But generally, you know, unless you're fully wrapped around it and we're really punching light through, you're not seeing much. Something you also have to worry about is if we do spill light on this back wall, you will see the seams. And you can, depending on where you get the right angle. So this isn't fully, you know, clean curve, and not a lot of LED walls are. They're at, you know, certain angles. So you do have to be careful about just throwing light everywhere. You have to be very careful about that. So generally we're at least 8 feet off of the wall. And that gives us a good space between the actual actor, because you also have to worry about moireing. If you ever shoot a camera at a TV, you see these wild lines all over the place. You don't want to see that. That's going to give away the magic trick. As well as, like I said before, throwing light at the wall, your black levels will jump straight up. You can kind of see it at the bottom of the wall where it's kind of almost spilling onto it. But if you want to keep those black levels, keep the light away from it. A lot of people use backlit scenes a lot when working with virtual production, because it's very easy look to pull off as well. Because generally you'll have, and we did it today, you know, you had the moon in that top left corner, and then you had the sky panel hitting that soft moonlight onto you, and it's just high enough where it looks like that angle's hitting you. So there's some tricks that you have to kind of come up with and work with when you are shooting with this technology.
You know what the dot pitch on those walls are?
2.9, I believe. Yeah. So this is a Chauvet, 2.9 video wall. The moving one right now is an F4. This one's just a proof of concept. So we're using the panels that we have in here as well as the top wall. So generally the video walls that you don't see can be obviously lower in resolution because you're not seeing them. You are getting the reflection, so you do have to be careful with that. But generally, you can compensate for that.
I also think Super 35 would help with that, right? Using Super 35 where you can control your depth of field. You don't want that wall to be super sharp. So
yeah, the follow-up, and especially the lens choice as well. A lot of characteristics and how the video wall look actually depends on the lens, and you'll see that in any film. It's chosen on those characteristics. So we've seen some that work beautifully, and we've seen some that are just like, oh, we can't use that one anymore. But with these lens sets, it's super sharp, and you do get that fall off, which is beautiful. And those tight shots are amazing. We were shooting some, I think, at like 50 or 100 today, and it looks so good. So you do have to be careful with shooting, too in focus, like a broadcast camera.
What kind of stop do you have now? Do you have like a sweet spot that you want to be on the?
I mean, anywhere between, wide open, and we'll go to like maybe T8 at the farthest, but if anything more than that, you are going to catch everything in focus. And you really can't be doing that, and obviously the higher resolution of a video wall that you have, the more you can get away with. So if this came down, you know what I mean, or we were close to the wall, you're building a smaller stage. Again, there's so many variables that you have to think about when you're building a stage. If one thing's off, this magic trick is completely, gone. And that's something that we've really spent our time over the past couple of years, is going like, how do you, take somebody who wants to build a stage like this and ask them, what are your main goals? Like, what are you actually trying to shoot? And then from there, we go out and try and build a custom stage for them, because everybody has different means of use. Is it being rented out every day? Are you using it for your own personal, projects and whatnot? So you have to be really careful about, how you put these stages together, because sometimes you have a component that won't talk to another one. So, and those are just all the headaches that we had to deal with over the past couple of years of just like trying to plug something in and like, it's just black screening, early on, like right when COVID hit, we really were just like, all the work was gone, and it's like, well, what do we spend our time in? And this goes more to the creative side. If you're interested in learning about how to, utilize this technology, whether that's in the creative side or the technical, first things first is jump in Unreal. Like, there's so much that can be said about using Unreal. One, because it's free. And two, because everybody seems to be using it, and it's an amazing tool. So if you are interested, and how I even got started was just like 1 month, I just jumped into Unreal and, try and utilize it on that end alone. And then there's infrastructure that kind of comes around this. And that's really where you got to find a group of guys to kind of go in and work out all these problems, because there's 1,000 of them, between the camera tracking, to the lens encoding, to the rendering, there's a lot that goes on. And if you're definitely jumping in this for the first time, definitely talk to the right people, so you understand what you're getting yourself into. Because honestly, when we started this, we had no clue. I was running face first into a brick wall.
Us too.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of people out there that are like full of shit when it comes to this, right? Like, I think what really works here, beyond like our two cultures that are really well aligned, is like, this stuff is really humbling. It is hard. And like the studio team are awesome, because they just like, they put their head down, they put the time in, like tens of thousands of hours wrestling this workflow. And we're extremely open to have us come in and sort of supplement, bring in a lot of equipment. We're extraordinarily fortunate. I need to shout out not only to Barry and the Panasonic team, but obviously, Tony and Snehal at Zeiss. Thank you so much. We're exclusively using a combination of Zeiss Supreme Primes, that's top of the line cinema glass, and Tom and Victor at Fujifilm. We actually have 3 Primistas in here right now. There's a lot of gear floating around in the studio, but it's a function of like the right team at the right time with the right culture. We're humble, we're hungry, and we're highly collaborative. And I think that makes all the difference in the world. So beyond just, the team and the culture here, and you're just getting a little taste of it, Studio Lab also does consulting. They also do installations. I think the hallmark, and what I used to tell people about TED Talks and what we do in Boston, is like New England punches way above its weight class. TED Talks are not being transformed in New York. It's not being transformed in LA or London, although a lot of that technology is coming from London. Shout out to Disguise and the team over there, as well as like a lot of the tracking technology. But it's, now is a great time. And I think one of the hallmarks from the last episode that we did with you, Derek, was like, no matter what we say, I don't want people to feel intimidated about this, because I knew nothing about this 12 months ago. I was staring into like an abyss, which was the end of in-person events. And at the scale that we operate at the Opera House, I was like, God, we're in the same boat as like Cirque du Soleil. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back in there. And so we took the opportunity that the pandemic presented as an opportunity to like rebuild the team, refocus on our mission, and to find a digital first strategy that allowed us to transition out of our 10th anniversary show back in 2019, which was a 10 camera cinema shoot, into this new form factor. And I think it set us up long term. And it was like the right time with Ian and the Studio Lab team, Tim, Aaron, Ben, John, because we're just hungry. We're fascinated by the technology, but we were also like, it is humbling. And to be able to jump into that boat together and go through that journey, it's really, really powerful.
Yeah, one really important thing: green paint is not required.
That too. That too.
So
that
Derek,
doesn't look even. That doesn't look. Was that level okay? Is that no?
Derek, any questions? So very much we thought about this as sort of like us getting together virtually in the studio over beers, but I'm sure you've got some questions in there. So stop us or have us back up. We've got plenty of like demos and experiences and toys to show, but we really wanted to use this opportunity to sort of answer as many questions as possible. So this comes not only for the live audience, but the archive afterwards, a great educational resource.
Definitely. Well, we do have a question. And before I get to that, we'll remind everybody, yes, definitely get your questions in. I know if you guys out there like me, you're mind blown right now. I've just been staring at the screen, just in awe at what's taking place live right now. But we had a question on parallax and how what equipment is used to account for it. I kind of feel like we're on a Reddit explain like I'm 5 subthread right now. Break it down for the people out here who are new to this technology.
Yeah.
How do you account for all of that, man?
So I'm going to do something very interesting here, and I'm going to take the tracker off the camera and I'm going to show you what it looks like. Something also that needs to be said is this scene that is created back here actually will work really well for this because we have trees in it. So if you guys hold the jib there, I'm going to take this off, and what you'll see is basically what this is supposed to look like if I was holding the camera, but I'm going to take it off. So is that held off? Sweet. All right, so I'm taking it off now, and this will make sense in a second. But as
Things
you can see,
about to get trippy.
this tracker is what is rendering the world behind me. And the closer I get, so if I get close to the world, think about it like we're actually moving a camera inside the unreal world. So that's what this thing is here. So again, as long as you put this right on top of the camera, right, and align it, and that's what those dots were, calibrating where this actual sensor is with what the camera is seeing. And again, just like you would, if I brought the camera in closer and I went this way, we're going to get into the lingo here, but what this is being rendered is called a frustum. Now this frustum and why we talk about it is like you have an inner frustum and an outer frustum. Right now we're not running an outer just because of performance. We want to keep the most performance in here, but you can actually see everything that's rendering. And if we talk about perspective, again, this is just a 3D world. So if you look at this tree here, and I'm going to try and show it, if I walk around it, and again, you're not at my perspective, but you can definitely see it move, as well as you can see the trees behind it are parallaxing behind it. Now, again, there's a couple things that may allow this to happen. Obviously, it's the tracker, which puts us in 3D space. And if you want to put this back on top, you guys kind of understand this part? Does this make sense? Okay,
all right,
sweet. So
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Does it have to be in a real shoot? You would recalibrate that now if you took it off.
Absolutely, yeah. Now it's just junk. Yeah.
I'm a geek. I just had to say that. I was like, wait, doesn't that have to be calibrated?
Yeah. So
I was thinking
again,
the same thing.
You would take, like, again, as long as it's in the rough space, you guys will see a pretty good parallax. But again, when you're on a film shoot or a commercial shoot, these things need to be perfect, like very perfect. So what I just did there is definitely a don't do if you're on set and you're moving things around. But the second half of that is obviously how the world is set up. And if you've jumped around in any 3D software, 3D program, you can see how when you move your play around, you're just moving a position. So, as long as this camera is tracked and this tracking is then being sent to Disguise, which is pretty much our compositing computers and our rendering machines, then it can let Unreal know, hey, this is where the camera is. And when it's floating, just like it is now from left to right, it is not only moving our very real, camera in our space, it is also moving a digital camera in the digital world. And that is very important. And you have to understand how your digital world and your physical world line up. Because if you are doing any set dressing or moving trees around, you don't want a branch sticking out into your physical world. Those are some weird things that you can definitely see if you're not careful with your set design.
Now, we did have a question come in from Shaggy Mummy joining us on YouTube. How many mocap cameras are being used to track the cinema camera?
I believe we have 12 right now. So there's 12 all around the room. And these are set up specifically for these cameras. So they're a little bit further back in our studio because these far jib swings need to get this whole room. But you can throw as many as you want together. The more you have, the more accurate the tracking is. But for our room, we felt 12 works well. And on top of that, you can track as many cameras as you want as long as you create the actual tracker. So that's something that's great is with this tracking solution, it's a lot easier to track multiple cameras, which is another thing that Tedx did. They tracked multiple cameras and we're able to do camera switching, which we can also show as well. I can check if I have it on here. So again, when you have one perspective, if you're going to switch to your second camera perspective, it's going to look wrong, right? So what happens is if we have two cameras tracked, we'll actually see that it'll switch like from this perspective to the other perspective simultaneously. And that's kind of where that delay calibration comes in. You have to calibrate how long it's going to take from the camera to do a switch. So, this is really widely used for broadcast because they need to do it on the spot live. There's no second cutting. So, it's just really go back to the tracking question. Depends how big your space is and how many cameras you want.
Well, to Ian's credit, I think you guys played an enormously outsized role in the white paper that this guy's published for Multicam. So once again, it's an example, I think, here in New England of just quietly putting in an enormous amount of effort and time to let the product speak for itself, because that was critical beyond the form factor and the culture here and the wall is we needed multicam. And back when we opened up a dialogue, that was a really hard, tough ask.
Yeah.
And once again, timing, culture, technology, and for us to be all on that journey together, where you guys figured out and nailed multicam, the timing couldn't have been better. So.
Yeah.
And I want to add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add to multicam. So color management, right? So normally with a live shoot, you have color management. You guys are doing something different. You're actually working in Vlog with a light applied in the camera, preview light. And so can you talk a little bit about that and why you decided to go that route?
Yeah. Again, with DPs and directors, you want to get to your final image as early as possible. We actually had a DIT on set too, doing some color grading work just to make sure all of our levels were correct. And something that's really important, obviously, is the color management, because we need all of these to line up. And it's one thing when a sensor sees red and it knows it's red, right? But when you I like to think about the video wall as just another massive sensor that's just emitting light, right? That's pretty much what it is. That red on the video wall needs to be, the red on his shirt, and they need to line up, because if they're off or if they look wrong, then you're going to see some really weird looking artifacting, as well as the camera might not even be able to represent that color. Or the video wall might not be able to. So when we're working, with these specific cameras, when we do those color calibrations, we usually are letting them sit. And it used to take 3 to 4 hours. Sometimes I'm pretty sure we did one overnight that was 6 hours long of a color calibration.
R19 baby.
Yeah, and that was a year ago, when we were just wow, if one thing was off or somebody moved the camera, that's gone out the window. You're not utilizing it anymore. You have to restart. So for us, what you usually do is you'll set the camera down, you'll go through around a couple thousand shades of every color you can imagine, and it builds its own profile and LUT basically for that camera. And then once that's figured out, you apply that onto the video wall, and then the camera and the video wall are now speaking, I guess you could say, the same color management language, which has been really crucial to work with. Because again, every camera is going to represent colors differently. Every camera plus a different lens set is going to do that as well. So it's really crucial to get those dialed in. It's night and day between the differences you see.
Yeah, I would advise anyone considering this, do not do this without a DIT.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
So you guys are recording. You're recording 4K 12-bit in camera. you're recording vlog in camera, even though you got the preview, so you see that it looks right to you. So you have the ability in post now to regrade, to tweak it. Dimitri's like, you know what, make it a little warm, a little cool. So you have that ability by doing that and shooting in that log mode. But at the same time, using the lightbox and the camera to provide a nice preview, so you get a good sense of what it's all about, like we're seeing now.
Another shout out to our great partner, Company 3, who's doing all our HDR color grading.
They're awesome.
Those colorists are chef's kiss.
Yeah. Agreed.
Can you guys talk about how lighting plays into this? I know you touched upon it earlier, Ian, but with a more, something like you're talking about Mandalorian or something, movie, TV, where it's not just somebody sitting there talking, pretty easy lighting setup where the lighting is changing. And we've talked about how the background changes in regards to the scene, but can you talk about how you guys handle the lighting aspect of that?
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into obviously this lighting side, and depending on what you're trying to do, again, this is always dependent on if you're trying to do a day to night type of transition or whatnot, or what generally is used is just we're changing what scene we are, and it's going to stay that, that time of day or whatever. So if we do go into that night scene, something that you usually do, and I definitely recommend, is a pre-light day. It's super important to do a pre-light day because or two, as many as you want. Again, you're doing a lot of pre-production, and the reason why we say that is because usually you'll come in, you'll sit down with an LD, and they'll sit next to the DP, as well as I'll be there to make sure everything they want to be represented in the digital world. Then now we have to match it to our physical world. So it starts off from a lighting perspective. Inside Unreal, we get the digital scene set how we want it, where do we want the sun to be, or if it's interior, how brightly lit do we want the room to be, and then we work in. We then now are lighting for the physical world. So you kind of have to separate that. And I think what's been great is to work with the DP and have him understand what the different, lighting scenarios are and how you can tweak things. Like, for instance, like this world, we spent a while really trying to dial in atmosphere lighting. How much, output did the skylight, put out, because you can have really hard shadows and you have really soft shadows in the digital world. And then going back again to your physical world, what you would do is you'd create a preset in a lighting console that would ultimately have all the adjustments in lighting fixtures inside the console. And we have triggers inside that lighting console that go from world to world. So on our shoot day, when it was the first TEDx shoot we were doing, we sat there and we had a full day. We pre-programmed all the lights in all of the sets. And at the end of the day, when we actually came down to the shoot, we had, the actors come up, deliver their lines. And every time a trigger was made on the iPad, it would update it to the lighting console. It would happen real time. And everything that the DP did the day before that was lit, that was pre-lit, would happen instantaneously. So that's where the prep work comes in. It's a lot of just making sure those days that you have available with studio time and nobody else is there, you're really just spending time like really dialing what you want it to be. And then from there, we had some tweaks here and there, and that's the beauty of it. We did light it the day before, but there was obviously the opportunity to go, hey, can we move this over a little bit more, make that a little bit warmer or cooler. And you'll find that, you want to get it as close as possible, a couple days before, but things change and you have to kind of roll with those punches.
And I have a question.
Mindful of, oh, go ahead, Barry.
I have a question about, so you have your iPad using, controlling, talking to your disguise system, what have you. That same app is also communicating with your dimmer board, your DMX controller.
Yeah. So as long as
that all in the same software.
Yeah, well, it's not all the same software. So to give you an idea, like it's as long as you set it up in that order to trigger those certain events, you know what I mean? So this could just be standalone and just control that world. How we had it on here for the director that day was this next button, and they could just cycle through all of these, worlds that they had created, months beforehand. So in this case, yes, there would just be one button that would not only trigger the world change, but it would also trigger the lighting changes. Whereas today, there wasn't really much to trigger as far as the world changes, but there was the lighting changes. So instead of routing it all through this iPad, we just had all the changes go through the board. And that way it was really one easy, communication between John, you know, in the DP, and they were just going back and forth. Hey, make this change, and we made a change in the world. Now update it in real world. So, you know, you can spread your control across multiple people, but I think at the end of the day, when you get to that lighting change, you need it all to kind of aggregate into one spot, like one uniform. Hey, when we hit go, all of these things happen immediately. You're not hitting go on one world and then go on the lighting, because then you get this weird overlap.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, going back to lighting, Shaggy Mummy's back with another question. Shaggy Mummy, he said he's looking to make a much lower budget virtual production setup. Have you heard of using RGBW controlled lights to fake the environmental lighting, then keying out the subject using normal means?
Yeah, I mean, again, these are things, if you want, we can talk further. If you want to just send me a DM anywhere, we can get deep into this. The quick answer is, depending on how you do it, you know, you can pixel map a light where, you know, you're pulling an actual color, you know, piece of color data from Unreal and you're sending it into that light, and that light is then matching it. What generally happens though is depending on what type of light you have, that can change. So if you're working with sky panels, it's probably very close. But if you got something that's a little bit lower and won't have that color reproduction, I would do it by hand. You know, I'd rather really dial that in and then key out the background. And then I think the big thing on that is, obviously, if you want to have real-time tracking, we all started somewhere. I use the Vive system to really get that first tracking going, and I did that with green screen, and it works really well. Actually, you can get some amazing results. So
the gateway drug to virtual production.
It is. Like,
everyone starts with Vives.
Everybody does. They've got that market locked down. Because again, you jump into it. Vive, you know, any 3D system or the Oculus or whatever, I would recommend the Vive just because that's what I started with. So if you have any questions, you're trying to start up with that, I can definitely answer that for you. That was a couple months ago, but again, as long as, you know, you really take the time, like when I saw the Mandalorian and everything, that got me excited, because I was like, oh, this is plug and play. Like, these guys are showing up on set and
that's ILM stagecraft, baby.
Yeah,
that is like blank check.
Exactly. So it's like, how do we get that as close to real as possible? When somebody comes on and walks on set, how do we have that experience for them be you know, a good time, instead of just, because before it was just so blocky to work with. You had to, you know, shut things off, bring them back on, write your own configuration files. And over time, this is going to get easier and easier. So, you know, if you are interested and you are, you know, trying to make your own, you know, short film or whatever in Unreal, you're doing with green screen, do it, because those same processes are going to carry over to this. It's going to be different, obviously, because you're going to have a real live background, but understanding simply camera movement and how you get tracking into Unreal, all of that, it'll carry over very easily when you get onto a stage like this.
Yeah, I want to add something that's also really important, is
actually,
lens metadata.
One point here is that
yeah, we can get to that.
To differentiate between just creating a scene or level in Unreal Engine and then the optimization required to do this, because a lot of people just think like, I'll just cobble something together, it looks great on my computer, and they'll throw it up on the wall, and it's like, it doesn't work the same way. So just to speak a little bit about optimization, because that's also part of the learning curve and some of the humbleness.
I think lens data also ties into that, right? So you want the proper perspective. So and
so again, we can kind of answer both of these. What Barry's talking about is lens metadata, and something that is on these specific lenses is, you know, it's sending out XD data, and we're getting that live, and we can utilize that for this, the zoom and focus. We're taking that data and we're ingesting that into Disguise, which tells Disguise what the lens characteristics actually are. So that's something that we can get into. But the optimization side as well is important, because when you're taking an Unreal file that's just running on your computer and you're running, and it's all real time. We want to be at 60 frames per second. We want to be, again, at a high frame rate, so this background can update. If we're running at like 10 frames per second, it just really, you can see the jitteriness of it, right? So, you know, you're also rendering in a certain resolution. So we can either render 1080, 2K, 4K, or, you know, even more sometimes. And to get the cleanest and crisp looking image, you want to be rendering 4K, but it also is it
crushes
your GPU. Like that thing's just gonna have a hard time chugging out all that information. So that's why when you work with a team, for instance, Neoscape built this asset. Not only are they brilliant at making beautiful looking scenes, they make them run very efficiently, like very efficiently. So that's something to keep in mind, is when you're building these scenes, they need to be correctly built. They're taking the lens data unit off of it. I can actually show you.
Bring it over here, because this is another shout out to someone who's doing some really cool stuff. Patrick Campbell from Synchrolink. We got introduced to him through Tom Fletcher and Gary Adcock. Tom at Fujifilm and Fujinon, but an opportunity to go all in on XD lens encoding. Patrick's solution here, which Ian has in his hands, the Synchrolink Mark 0, is a game changer, because it allows us to pull all of that lens encoding data right into Unreal Engine and Disguise. That allows us to continue to sort of utilize this facility and this team to create some like even more cool stuff as far as like our next pre-production cycle.
Yeah, and we just pulled this off the back of the camera, and this is on a jib, so John's just keeping that balance there. So again, with this, I don't know if you can pan to your right a bit. John, you got that? Yeah, pan to the right a bit. So we have our lens here, and if you can just turn it that way, facing them, you know, with these Fujinons, they come with extended data, so we actually can plug this right into the lens. And what this is going to do is going to send real-time information. So when we focus or zoom, it's getting sent into here. And this is now taking that focus and zoom data. And it actually has a lens profile built for this camera, this specific lens. And what happens is, as they're turning it, you know, it's giving us real-time update. Okay, you know, they're focused at 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, you know, and it's happening, and it's actually synced with the shutter. And it's gen locked, which is also incredibly important. Having your whole system gen locked is really huge. And this, honestly, you know, the guys at Factory Optic really knocked us out of the park, because a lot of the stuff that we've been using has just been, you know, more mechanical. And so you'd have more of just like your standard you know, focus system, but instead of it controlling the system, what it actually is doing is it's reading it. And when you get those micro jitters of movements, what happens is it sends false data. So it would think it's at 3 feet, but it's at 3.5 feet. And you really can't use that. This stuff has to work, and it has to work all the time. If you're out one frame, you know what I mean? You can't, I just feel really bad asking your actors, hey, can we do that again? The lens data was off, and now we have to retake that, even though it was a beautiful scene that you guys just actually made work. So again, when the stuff comes to technical, you really want that to be the last thing on your mind. And when you're shooting, you have to have gear that works, and it all needs to talk to each other perfectly. So that's just another, you know, piece into the, I think there's around 10 pieces individually that really make up a virtual production studio. And
there's different flavors, there's different variants, there's different tech stacks. You know, once again, you know, this is a flavor that we're all in with, and these are great partners, but there are others out there. But I think what we're learning is that everyone's kind of figuring this out right now. So even if you're being exposed to it for the first time, now's a great time to learn, you know, get involved with Unreal. They've got a tremendous amount of like free resources and tutorials online right now. Don't feel like you've missed the boat. Like, anyone who pretends they've got it all figured out, once again, is full of shit. I can't state that enough.
I mean, and I'll say, like, it's always where like you really don't know what's going on. There's so many updates happening, you know, with Unreal Engine 5 even coming out. I know that isn't actually, if anybody has a question, we can't utilize Unreal Engine 5 with this technology yet, because it's currently not supporting this. But there's so many things that are changing, that are constantly changing, that you kind of have to just always be on top of it. And, you know, workflows change, and your whole idea of, you know, what's that next best thing to bring DPs and directors in the door and help them understand how to utilize this technology. And what's been really fun is you bring people in who haven't utilized this technology yet, and it's really just a learning process, both on our end and their end. You know, we're figuring different things out, and we're coming up with solutions based on you know, what their needs are. It's every production is different, and that's what's crazy about this stuff. And it's also really fun, because you get to spend time solving problems for things that haven't been solved yet.
You never get bored.
Yeah. There's a lot of nights where you're like bang your head against the wall, but like
that's all right.
Other than that, it's a good time. Yeah.
Payoff is great, and just our cameras, a lot of our cameras do record actually, particularly VariCams, the lens metadata. The Zeiss metadata system is actually based on Click/I. We record that. We record LDS. We record before, so we can actually record that in the camera dynamically. So for some reason you had to go back and do the green thing, but you needed to know what those coordinates were. You can actually pull that data from the files. And our PTZ cameras, the UE100 and the UE150, actually have the free D, which is the data output from the camera that these systems will recognize and give you the movements of the camera, and it's X and Y movements and what have you.
Well, if we can kind of continue on that, because we did have a question come in, and I swear it did not come in from Barry Russo. It was asking why the VariCam. If you could talk about the choice of camera here.
Yeah, Barry, I'm going to throw that to you, sir, because you know way more about. I mean, I know just enough to get into trouble, but
well, Dmitri's a fan of the VariCam products and the look, right? A lot of people love the look of the VariCam, wonderful skin tones. And the specifications of this job, the Super 35 sensor on the VariCam, we wanted the VariCam 35 because we wanted the 12-bit, we wanted the vlog workflow, we wanted a 10-bit 422 output for the disguise system. So we hit all the check boxes, as well as the dynamic metadata and everything else that it did. So we hit all the check boxes and Jang lock capabilities and what have you. So pretty much it was a no-brainer. It fit the bill, and it got great support.
We wanted to use the 35 as well, just because that 12-bit 4444 workflow, like Zeiss Supreme Primes, Fujinon Primistas, Disguise servers. We're the only independent TED event in the world that's using XR LED, and we felt like we wanted to put our best foot forward, and so we wanted that additional color latitude. And we went to company 3, and it's like, what do you want to grade on? They're like 12-bit, so it was like easy. Great sensor, great camera, great partnership with Panasonic, both on the pro video side as well as the visual systems.
Well, we talked about the VariCam LT initially because I heard, XL works. Oh, live. I'm thinking live, right? Live shading, because we have the HRP 1000. We can shade the camera live. And they said, no, we're working in vlog. You're not doing any of that. It's like, oh, okay. And then when we got into it more, I made block diagrams, and we're talking about different workflows, and we decided, no, we want 12-bit. Okay, so I could do 12-bit on the LT, but I have to do it externally with an Atomos. Why don't we just use the VariCam 35? And it's like, hey, sure. There you go. And that's the rest was history.
But it's part of the dialogue. It's like, okay, what are the constraints that we're operating in? What are the glass that we're using? What kind of sensor properties do we want? And then, through Studio Lab and Zeiss and Fujinon and Panasonic, like, this is our workflow, this is our stack. But, there's different camera platforms, different flavors of all this. It's a function about building a great team, setting the vision, and then figuring out what's the right stack and what's the right workflow for you.
Yeah, I want to offer something also about shooting, in this world with the LEDs. Having Super 35 in that shallow depth of the field, having a 4K background to render, I don't think you would see a difference other than choking your system. I don't think you would see a difference in terms of the wall being projected in 2K versus 4K. And like you said earlier, it loads up your system.
Filmed in both, right?
Yeah.
So could you see a difference?
I would say, so when you render in a higher quality, something that you have to also understand is, like, when you render video games and video game textures, it's differently. So if it only calls for a certain resolution, it's not going to render the texture at a higher resolution. So what you find out quickly is the higher that you can render these, the better. You render at 1080 versus 2K. Yes, it will be a little different, but ultimately, the higher resolution you can get, the better. So I think there's a difference, but I'm looking at these things all day long. So, if you were somebody who hasn't seen a lot of these things in the past, definitely you might not even look, once. But if you ask me, again, I'm always trying to get that next bit of detail. And there you go. You just focused. But I'm also trying to, understand, like, hey, if they had to punch in just like they did there, what does it look like if we are, on a 50 or 100 and you're only seeing, this much of the wall? So that's something you have to think about as well. If you have a wide, yeah, it's not as noticeable, but if you are going and you're punching in tight, you're going to notice those little details.
And is it more costly to use a 4K?
Absolutely. Yeah, you will eat up a lot of your render machines. So that's where you get into something called cluster rendering, which Disguise does very well. Basically taking multiple machines and linking them together, splitting this frustum behind us in half or in quarters or even more than that to render a higher resolution. That stuff, came out recently, and there's some good things and some bad things about it that you have to be careful with. And just like any new type of workflow or product that comes in, you have to kind of mess with it, play around with it, see how it works on shoot, and a lot of practice shoots just to be sure, because you don't want to try something new first day and you got your DPs and directors showing up. You're like, yeah, we're gonna give this a shot for the first time. So you do have to be careful when you are adding new workflows.
Yeah. We want to go to the brain bar?
We can show a little bit of that. So we'll
Definitely.
get this jib swinging around. We won't show the computers because they're buried away in some other room, because if they were in here, you would be able to hear them. They're extremely loud as well. So they're going to swing over here. Now
they're a great heating source in the winter.
They are. So you're going to swing around here, and John is over here as well. John is amazing with all of this. He is the brains behind all the technical that happens here. So what he's showing you right now is Disguise. How's the exposure there? Can you guys see that all right?
Yeah, you're at 400 ISO. You can go to 800 or 5000.
Okay, sweet. Is that better? She just stopped up on that.
Yeah, it looks good.
Sweet. So again, you're seeing this right now. This is the timeline. John's mic'd up, so you can kind of give you a brief overview here about what's going on. Go ahead, John.
Inadvertent product placement.
That is our lifeblood.
Yeah.
I'll give it back, John. Don't worry.
I'm telling him. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically this right here is Disguise. It's designed around, first of all, a timeline at the bottom here that will allow you to timeline different things, keyframe, different effects. You got to remember, Disguise was originally based around a workflow for large concert events. So pretty much any show where you go and they have this giant LED wall that's bigger than life, it's probably run by something similar to Disguise or Disguise. That's where they made their bread and butter. And before the pandemic started, they had started to kind of work towards virtual production and that kind of stuff. And when the pandemic hit and there were no concerts to go to with massive LED walls anymore, they really took a hard pivot towards virtual production and pretty much took over the market for that. They're doing an excellent job. They're throwing out new versions every couple months with amazing features. When we first hopped on board with them, it was nothing like the experience we have today. In fact, we just did a shoot with a different client, and we had done a similar shoot in February, and they said the experience this time around versus the one in February was basically night and day.
Yeah.
So you can see, going back to this, we have a timeline here. We also have like a 3D visualizer here. So this is actually updating in real time. So as the camera was focused more on the LED wall, the whole Unreal scene was actually showing up on our LED wall here. You can kind of see our cameras. So there you are right there.
Yeah. So
Looking
you're
out of this
actually,
camera.
you're being shown right here. And then John, real quick, so they can see the tracking. I want to switch over to the tracking side of things. So this is tied in between a KVM switch. We have all 6 computers tied into one. So if you're sitting down, you don't have to jump from computer to computer. You have them all right here. John, highlight the actual jib camera and then back up. You can see. So what you're seeing now is all of those cameras that are in the roof. They are actually triangulating the position of where you are. So you're actually looking at the triangulated position of where you are in our studio. That is then sent to Disguise and then dealt with from there to render the rest of the scene in entirety. So there's other computers here that you can see. We have 2 other render nodes up here, as well as the compositing machines. And then these are our media servers for tracking, color management as well. And all of that is talking together to kind of give you what you're seeing on the LED wall now.
Yeah, so then real quick, this right here is the Disguise render stream layer. And this will give you control over your whole render stream. Right here, you have your different cluster assignments and things like that. So you can do what Ian was talking about, where you break up your scene into different tiles and split up the rendering between multiple computers. Right here is all these exposed parameters that we have. That's allowing Ian to go change what time of day it is, the cloud cover, pretty much sky is literally the limit as to what you can do.
Yeah.
It's just mind blowing and crazy, and it's honestly really fun.
Yeah.
John's saying it's mind blowing. I'm sitting here like I don't even have words. If his mind is blown, man.
It takes a lot less than what people think it does.
He's like, don't give us too much credit. No, I mean, this is just wild to me. I've been sitting here in awe at how this. So that all communicates, Ian, with that iPad that you have there.
Yeah, so you can't see it too well. I don't know if you can zoom in, but as I'm changing a parameter here, this time of day parameter that we have is selected from a value of 0 to 2400. So this is really where you get into the technical side and the programming side. Every single one of these parameters, you could do sun angle, sky intensity, sky saturation. Those are the ones that we have. And again, you can, if you can see it here. And then if you push in, anything that we do here updates on the actual computer and then gets sent to Unreal. So if you bring it in, no matter what, as long as you tell us you want control over it, we can give you control over it the day before. So yeah, this is going over OSC. It's happening pretty much instantaneously as well. So yeah, you guys have any other questions about the brain bar?
No, I don't even think people know what to ask. If they're sitting here like I am, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even, we got way, Dmitri, we talked about going into the woods, but I think you guys left me like 6 exits ago.
Sorry.
We're not in Kansas no more.
This is awesome. I mean, literally, I'm sitting here and I really do. I don't think people, even people who have a cinema background way more than I do, just don't even know. I mean, this is how new is this? How prominent is this out there in the industry? I mean, is this something that you're going to find a lot of people who have cinema experience that just don't know this technology like that?
I guess that depends on what your end goal is. You know what I mean? This technology is made specifically for a specific type of user. Like, I think something that shouldn't be done, and I think a lot of the times we think is like everything can now be shot on the LED wall, and it's just not true. Like, there's some people who come in, they're like, oh, we want to do this interior or something in here, and sometimes you do have to tell them, hey, go shoot this in real life. Like, you're not gaining a lot by doing it on an XR LED wall. And then you get the people who come in with an idea, and a lot of their stuff is even built around stuff you can't do in the real world. So, when you talk about working with this technology, you really have to understand, what's the reason? It is a big shiny object, like when you see it, it's like, oh, that'd be great to utilize it. But if you really think about it, how are you, getting to your end result quicker? If this aids and helps you tell your story better, use it. And when you're first coming on set, if you're curious about this, if you're wondering, hey, would this be good on set to use? I would recommend trying to find, studios, or if you are local to us, that are doing this, and kind of get, dip your feet in the water, try it out for the first time. And that's why we say jump in with Unreal, because, people are looking for artists, people are looking for people who can build these digital scenes. And there's a lot of people in the 3D industry that are slowly pivoting, and you're finding that there's a lot of jobs that are being created that haven't even existed, a year ago, because of these workflows. So, if this feels like a lot of information, but you are curious, if you're more technical, go into the more technical side of things, jump into Disguise, see what they have, because they are more networking, zeros and ones. But if you're more creative and you're trying to tell stories, jump in Unreal and tell your own stories with just Sequencer and Unreal. That's where you really get bit, is like, wow, this thing has the potential to tell amazing stories. How do I use it? And then from there, once you find a project that could possibly use this, just ask a lot of questions, reach out if you guys have questions for us. We don't mind jumping on the phone and just kind of giving you a brief overview of what it might take. And again, for the first time when we were working with Tedx, it was a really interesting experience to go, hey, we have not much understanding about what the best workflow is. How can we figure this out, and do this together to figure out pretty much a pipeline that worked for them, individually. And again, there's the whole other side of building studios that, is like, again, what is your specific end goal? What type of content do you guys want to create? So you do have to be careful of the slippery slope of, all right, let's just shoot everything on this new technology because it's new. You do have to there's a reason why, you know, Mandalorian was shot 50-50 on the wall, and the other 50% was actually live action or blue screen. So this won't solve all your problems. It actually can make more for you.
Like all the world's, you know, it's a hammer, and all the world is full of nails when you sort of think about this. But to Ian's perspective, like, this is not the perfect tool for all applications for all forms of creative. You have to be selective. And I'll say, if you bite off too much, or you don't put the time in, particularly at like finding that cultural alignment, and it takes an enormous amount of pre-production to do this well. Otherwise, you will blow up yourself. You'll blow up your product. You will end up like getting 2/3 of the way through the valley of death of like XR LED, and you'll pack it in, and it'll you know, you'll flame out. So start early. Ask lots of questions, find a great team. I can't advocate strong enough for Ian, Tim, John, Ben, Aaron, the whole group here. Beyond just this amazing XR studio, they've got a podcast studio, a recording studio, co-working space, really, really cool facility up here in Derry. It's like 40 minutes north of Boston. Anyone who's in New England, I absolutely encourage them to kind of swing on by, learn more. If anything, these guys are, and ladies, for Lauren out there, waving at the marketing director right now. We forget there are women involved in this as well, and they bring a really exciting perspective to all this. But you know, I encourage you to reach out. I'm trying to think what else. There's a lot of creative destruction and a lot of new roles happening. I think you're gonna see increasingly a lot of virtual art departments begin to be built, particularly for people who understand Unreal and can apply it towards these new markets, these new creative endeavors, whether it be broadcast, film, cinema, television. But to Ian's point, you know, everyone thought 100% of Mandalorian was filmed in that volume. It's not. It's about 50. They may have done a little bit more in season 2, because ILM definitely advanced the workflow. They got better LED panels, better glass. I think it was a Panavision and Ultra as far as like the glass on it. But I think the anything is like, it moves really fast. You can look at just that Katy Perry video from May of last year, and then 6 months later, Billie Eilish came through, same facility in LA. The quality, the production value, same volume, was just dramatic, and that was just 6 months of time. And it moves really, really fast. So I think it's important to like surround yourself with knowledgeable individuals to share sort of your vision, but to give yourself enough time to do it and do it well. But I think that's the one thing, like being hungry and being humble, like constantly learning. Like, I'm fascinated about this, and we've only begun to scratch the surface. But that took like 18 months worth of work to get to this point. And so we use that time to kind of turn things around and go deep with these guys.
But for you, the show goes on. For TEDx, the show goes on, right? You had to come up with a solution. And I saw some of the preview footage. It was gorgeous. It felt real. I felt I was, you know, there. I can't wait to experience it with the immersive sound. So
later this fall.
Yes.
So Derek, final questions, thoughts? We've run a little long. We appreciate you bearing with us as far as jumping in hot right out.
Oh no, this has been great. I got one final easy question here for Ian, coming from another Ian Frustum, joining us here on Zoom.
Yes, Ian.
Oh,
ask if you are using OSC for the iPad to talk to the system.
Yes. So, okay. By the way, Ian Furza is another reason why a lot of this is possible. You know, he's one of the guys early on when we were learning all this. There's a Facebook group, and again, to answer his question, yes, this is OSC going straight into disguise, but going into, you know, a lot of this around like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, you know, there's a lot of people trying to figure out, hey, how do you do this? You know, the Mandalorian came out with something and it was like, you know, up in the air. Well, how do you make this work? You know, and he was one of the guys who right off the bat was just open and, you know, sharing his code. Hey, this is where this goes. This is where that goes. And really getting a lot of people up to speed on what's possible when utilizing Unreal and LED wall. So he's been amazing. He actually came up to our studio early on and worked on all of our stuff with us. And, you know, he's another amazing guy in the industry that if you have questions, go to him as well. So hope to see you soon, Ian.
Wonderful. Well, look, Dmitri, I'll let you close out because you're better hosting than I am. But I do want to thank you guys, you know, Dmitri, Ian, Barry, the entire Panasonic team, Studio Lab team. If I'm missing anybody, the B&H studio team with Michelle and Clarissa helping out really in the clutch in the last moments there. And to everybody else.
Thank you for some of that beautiful cinema lenses, Michelle. I'm feeling you, buddy.
Yes. Sorry for bothering you on your vacation, Michelle, right? So we got it all done. This was wild. Dmitri, I want to thank you for going the extra step. I mean, you hit me up like a week ago and you're like, hey, guess what? Everything we planned, I'm taking it to another level. You're there live. It was just a unreal experience to watch you guys do this live. Ian, I have no words. I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, I just turned 40 and I'm like, Ian's like half my age and he's already just light years ahead of me. So huge inspiration. This has just been wildly entertaining, informative. You guys left me with just as much questions as wonder, which is always a good thing. Always have a hunger for knowledge. But I do want to thank everybody out there who tuned in, for watching, submitting your questions. As always, we try to bring you guys the next level of educational content, and nobody better than TEDxCambridge and Studio Lab and Panasonic to get you guys all hooked up with that tonight. So I do look forward to working with you guys again in the future. Ian, Barry, Dmitri, any closing words?
I have a question for Dmitri. How can customers viewers find out when the show is going to be launched and they can watch it? I can't wait.
Well, we're probably going to premiere. I mean, we got a lot of post-production work to do, and ultimately sort of lovingly turn everything over to Company 3 to grade it and conform it. So I think we're planning for a late fall premiere.
Okay.
It'll be 4K, HDR, like graded all the way. It will be mixed in Dolby Atmos. We've got great partners in Dolby as well. So even though the irony is like we're an all-volunteer team, we're really tip of the spear here with Studio Lab and this great partnership, as well as Panasonic, Zeiss, Fujinon, Disguise, Optitrack, all powered by, NVIDIA's GPUs, God bless them. More A6000s, please. But I think the way that we left it, the last thing is like, don't let anything we've shared tonight intimidate anyone from jumping in. Like I said, 12 months ago, I'd never heard of any of this technology. And it's just a function of like leveraging the challenge inherent in the pandemic, knowing that large scale events are still a long ways off for us, to open up a dialogue with Ian, Tim, the whole team here, to say, hey, listen, we're in this sort of storm together. Do you mind some people rowing along with you and learning? And they were said, yeah, the water's warm, come on up. And so there are over 200 or 300 of these XR studios popped up around the world. I would encourage you to go find some of them. And by and large, generally, those teams and those facilities are very open to collaborating, showing off a little bit, but also learning. This is just a flavor of it. There's a lot of them out there. Everyone's kind of figuring it out together. And the technology moves really, really fast. So thank you, Derek, and the B&H team for supporting us. And we were thrilled that literally we came hot right out of a chute, a few minutes late into this webinar. So I'm going to go have an adult beverage as soon as we end this.
Oh, look, you guys earned it. You guys earned it. Huge thank you again. I'm going to let you guys go. I know you guys had a long day. To everyone sending me messages asking why my background is not moving, go away. Leave me alone. That's it. Another rendition of the B&H virtual event space in the books. We will catch y'all next time. Thank you, guys.